Good evening. Hope everyone is doing well. We're learning Maseches Pesachim Daf Kaf Vav and as well Daf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. Yesterday, in the middle of the page on Daf Chav Hey Amud Beis, we began a sugya that the Gemara refers to as Hana Habalo le'Adam Bal Korcho. If a person is quote unquote in a forced scenario of violating a halacha. I'm going to share with you. I sent it out through WhatsApp. I'll do a screen share now to share with you what this looks like. What this machlokas looks like thus far, and then you can kind of use this on the side as we navigate this conversation. So we learned that there's a machlokas between Abaye and Rabbi, but there were two different versions as to where Abaye and Rabbi would be arguing. In version number one, Kipligi, where were they arguing? The Gemara said yesterday that they're arguing in a case of Efshar, where you had the choice to not walk past the store, but you still did. But even though you chose to walk past the store, below miskaven, you had no intention to smell the Isser, the Basar B'chalav store. That's version number one. And within version number one, Abaye is mutter, Rav is Asser, and fine. In version number two, on the left side there, it says that Kipligi, where's the machlokas? This case is different. It's the low Efshar. You are not able to not walk by the store. You live in a cul-de-sac and it's on the corner. There's only one way to get out. And at the same time, and you were interested in smelling. I love leaving my house and walking past the treif store with basar b'chalav. So that's case number two. Would that be mutter or not? Being that it's still lo efshar, there's no other option for you. That's the machlokas between them. And there were some subtleties therein. But basically, we know what Abaye holds. We know what Rabbi holds. We just don't know where they hold it. That is the framing for today. Because if you look on the top of Chavav Amud Aleph, which is where we're going to start, the Gemara says 3 lines down, Amar Abaye mina aminala. Abaye says, where do I get my opinion from? So on the chart here, this is the left, version 2, Rava in the oval, Abaye in the square, mina aminala. This is the shita that we're trying to explain right now. So I'll stop the screen share now. You've kind of got a frame of what's going on here. And please feel free to utilize the sheet as you see fit. I'll bring it up again a little bit later to summarize what we're learning. So within version number 2, that the machlokas between Abaye and Rava is in a case where you don't have a choice but to pass by the store, but it smells gishmak. So Amar Abaye, mina aminala, where is my opinion from that I say that it's mutter to do so? Answers the Gemara, 4th line, Chavav Amud Aleph Titania, the Brisa writes, Amru alav al Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, they say about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was alive during the times of the Beis HaMikdash, Shahaya Yoshed B'tzilo Shel Heichal B'Doresh Kol Hayom Kulo. He would sit in the shade of the Heichal. Now the Heichal, you're not allowed to just go inside and look inside the Heichal whenever you want, the Kodesh HaKodashim. You're not allowed to do that. The Kodesh is totally not allowed. What do we see that he was doing? Well, he was sitting in the shade. So let's see how the Gemara analyzes. In this case, where Yochanan ben Zakkai was teaching in the shade, it was a case of Delo Efshar. He didn't have a choice. He had to give shir right there. Why does he have to give shir right there? Yerushalayim's a big place. So take a look at Rashi just to our right. Dibur hamaschal Delo Efshar milidrosh lerabim hilchos hechag. The reason why he was sitting right there is because people were bringing korbanos, and they're going to have shilas. Rebbe, this might be a mum. Can you pass him for me? Rebbe, how do I do smicha? Whatever the shilas were, that's where he had to be. Now, before we continue, it's interesting to note that the threshold of what Efshar and low Efshar is not very high. You don't have to climb a fence to avoid walking past a Burger King. That's not correct. You're allowed to walk by. You're just not supposed to have hana. So here we see Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Gemara doesn't say go somewhere else. We call that lo efshar. You have no choice but to sit there. So what do we see here? This is a case where you have no choice. He had to give the shir right there, and he was clearly benefiting intentionally from the shade of the building, and it was permissible. So says Abaye, that's my proof that I hold that it's mutter in a case of lo efshar mekachavein, that I don't have another choice, and I enjoy the smell or I enjoy the hana. Totally fine. So that's his proof, a good proof. Says the Gemara, V'Rava Amar, nope, shiny heichal de lesocho asui. No, the heichal, the issur of benefiting from the heichal, the hana that you're not allowed to get, is on the inside of the heichal. But if you just happen to be sitting on the other side of the sun and the heichal's in the middle and you're benefiting from the shade, that's not the issur hana of the heichal. The issur hana of the heichal is being inside, looking inside, benefiting from the inside, and that's not what's happening here. Then says Rabbi Mino Aminallah, Amar Rabbi Mino Aminallah. Where's my shita from? If you look on the sheet, this is going to be the box that's in an oval that says Rava Aser. Rava says that in the case of lo efshar and the kamechaven, in the case where you don't have a choice and you are benefiting from with intent, you're benefiting from something. So then he says it's still usher. What's his case of precedent? Says the Gemara, a very, very well-known brisa. We've learned this, I think, in Maseches Tamid. I don't remember where it is. Man, I should probably look where it is instead of guessing. It's in Midos, actually. So what does it say there? Lulen hayu psuchen be'aliyas beis kodshei hakodshim. There were these openings, these little boxes that were on strings that you could kind of get into the Kodesh HaKodashim from the top, like kind of like an elevator of sorts, but it was encased. The people, it would be a three-sided case where an uman, a worker, could be in the case and be able to fix something on the walls inside the Kodesh HaKodashim. Very clever contraption. B'tevos, they were in a box, so that they wouldn't benefit from the enjoyment of looking at the room, at the kruvim, at the menorah, at the mizbeach hazahav. So many gorgeous things in there. Not only physically, but spiritually, people might have a yitzhar to look at that. So the haraya, says the Gemara, here we have a case where you have no choice. You have to go in and fix it. And we were concerned so much that you were going to benefit from it that we put you in a box. What does the box show you? You're not allowed to get hana. So beautiful. So Rabbi has his raya. And he says, so then if you look back at the sheet, you'll see under Abaye and under Rava, each of their rationales. Under Abaye, it says mutter because of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai that he sat in the shade. Under Rava, it says that it's usher, at least version 1, that it's usher. Why does Rava say that it's V1? It's version 1. So we see very clearly from Rava that this brisa indicates that you're not allowed to benefit from the walls. Even if you don't have a choice, you're not allowed to benefit from the walls. That's version 1. The Gemara questions version number 1 right now. We're about 10 lines down, 12 lines down. V'tizbara. V'tizbara means, and is there a svara in this? Is this logical? How can you say that this makes sense? V'ha'amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Reb Yoshua ben Levi. It's quoted in the name of Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, a very early Amora, Mishum Bar Kapara, from one of the earliest of the Amoraim. Bar Kapara was one of the authors of the Tosefta. And what did he say? Kol umare v'reach ein bahen mishum me'ilah. When it comes to hearing a sound, when it comes to sight, and when it comes to smell, these things are not called me'ilah. What is me'ilah? Me'ilah is an isser, to benefit from things in the mikdash that have a kedusha to them. It's a higher level Isser Hana. It's specified to the Mikdash, different than Isser Hana in that separate Isser, but nevertheless it's being compared at the moment. And it says the Gemara, if it's true what's happening here, that Kol v'mar v'reich ein behem mishum me'ilah, so then how could it be that Rav is bringing a raya from the box that the workers were being lowered into the Kodesh HaKodashim? After all, by looking by Mare, there's no Me'ilah. Says the Gemara, Ella male asu beveis kodshei hakodashim. There was just a higher level of kedusha. There a higher level of care in that case, and therefore not a very good argument. Ika de amre. Let's bring a second proof for the shita of Rava. So we've done version 1 of Rava. Let's do version 2, 1/3 of the way down. Chavav Amud Aleph. Ika de amre amar Rava. Really, Rava says as follows: Mina aminala. From where do I know my shita? That in a case of lo efshar v'kamachavin, where I don't have a choice but to walk past a place where there's an isser hana, or an isser me'il in this case, and v'kamachavin, and I'm benefiting from it. So then, how does Rava know that it's asr? So then, the Mari Makomos here are switched. What's his Mari Makom now? The Amar of Shimon ben Pazi, Amar of Yoshua ben Levi, Mishum Bar Kapara. So he quotes the same line that when it comes to sound and when it comes to looking and when it comes to smelling, that there's really no such thing as me'ilah. But here, unlike the previous iteration, here when the Gemara brings this up, it makes a gentle diuk and says me'ilahu deleka. There's no me'ilah. However, ha'isura ika. There is in fact an isser. Here it's an isser hana. It's an isser hana. It's not me'ilah, but it's an isser hana. My lav la'osan ha'omdin bifnim. Isn't this talking about people who are on the inside of the Kodesh HaKodashim, namely the workers? And therefore you should have a raya. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a proof to your shita, Rabba. I know you're looking to prove your opinion that in the case of lo efshar, but v'kamachavin, where you don't have a choice but to pass the place where there's an isser hana, and you're enjoying what you're seeing. I know you're trying to find a marimakum that says it's usser, but here we cannot say that halfway down low. We cannot say that la'osan ha'omdin b'chutz. Maybe the case of Reb Shimon ben Pazi was only talking about outside where people were listening to the Levium sing, they're looking at the beauty and they're getting a tremendous hana from it. That's not this. So the Gemara doesn't end up bringing a raya. So let's just look at this chart one more time. I'll just share it again with you and then we'll go back to the Gemara. This is our chart, a review of this one amud that we've seen so far. What we're going to do now, after this, is go into a sugya connected to Rabbi Yeshua, to Rav, what was his name? Rav Shimon ben Pazi. Sorry, Rav Shimon ben Pazi. But here's the summary that we're looking at. This sheet is correct. There's two versions of the machlokes Abaye v'Rava. The first machlokes is I could have chosen not to. I could have, but I chose to. But I'm not going to smell it intentionally. I like walking down Tui and walking past a place that makes basar. I enjoy that, but I'm not going to smell with intent. I could have gone another way. I could have walked up Pratt, but I didn't. So that's machlokes Abaye v'Rava. Abaye says that's fine. Rava says it's not. And machlokes number two is the machlokes that we have on the left side, where you don't have a choice but to go there, implying that if you did have a choice and you went there, you're shigitz. That's the wrong move. That's also, you're not allowed to do that. So it totally rejects version one. And in version two, it says the lo afshar v'kamachavein, in a case where you don't have a choice and you're enjoying it, that's where the machlokes is between Abaye and Rava. And as you can see under Abaye, his rationale for why he says it's mutter is that Rav Yochanan sat in the shade of the Kodesh HaKodashim of the Heichal, and the Uriah for Rava, both of them are rejected. But the first one was from the fact that they lowered the Umnin, they lowered the workers into the Kodesh HaKodashim in boxes that would not allow them to see the Kodesh. And the second version of the answer is that when it comes to vision, there is no Me'ilah. So answer number two. Again, they both get rejected. Good. Let's go back inside, and now we're going to analyze that sugya about what is included and not included from that list of kol, mare, and reach, to see what it is that, we're going to come back to this later actually, but to see what it is that actually is usher. We're about halfway down Daf Kavav Amud Aleph. Let's continue. Gufa. Amar Rib Shimon ben Pazi, Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Same brisa. It's not a brisa. A statement from the Amoraim. It's a memra from Mishum Bar Kapara. Kol umar v'reach ein bahen mishum me'ilah. We said that the Isra me'ilah is not triggered in regards to sound and sight and smell. Says the Gemara, v'reach ein bo mishum me'ilah. You're sure that smell is not part? It's not subject to me'ilah? I have a beautiful brisa that says other words. There's an Isra called being mefatem es aktoras, of making aktoras. What does it mean, making aktoras? It says again, brisa as follows. Vatanya, hamefatem es aktoras. We call it pitum aktoras, same word. Hamefatem es aktoras, the people who take all of the 11 spices and mix them together. If it's lehislamed ba'olamos or letzibur, if you're doing it as a kohen, as a dry run, you're doing it to practice, or you're doing it for the sake of the tzibur, to bring the korban, to bring the ktoras, great, no problem, putter. However, if the sole reason why you're being mefatem the ktoras is lahariach ba, if the reason why you're making it is to smell it, then the making of it is an isser deoraisa. Smelling it isn't an isser deoraisa, but the making of it is an isser deoraisa because you made it for the wrong reasons. You have no right to combine these 11 spices unless it's lahislamed ba or for the sake of the tzibur. You want a gishmak smell, and everybody knows that the smell of the ktoras is amazing, and you just want to keep it in your house. That's an isser d'oraisa to make it, just to combine the spices in their measurements. That's not allowed. That's not allowed. So says the Gemara, v'hamariach ba, once it's made, if you smell it, so then the halacha is potter. You're potter from the isser of being mefatem es aktoras. However, ela shemo'al. So we see that there is me'ilah by reach. So that's the Gemara's kasha. Reb Shimon ben Pazi, in the name of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, in the name of Bar Kapara, you want to say that there are three things that are not subject to me'ilah. There's kol, there's mare, and there's reach. Says the Gemara, that's not true. We have a brisa that implies that reach has me'ilah. Answers the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. We leave out reach now. We change the line. Really, it's kol umare ein b'hem mishum me'ilah l'fi she'ein b'hem mamish. When it comes to kol, sound, when it comes to mara, when it comes to vision, ein b'hen mishum me'ilah, there is no isser me'ilah there because it's nothing. It's sound waves or it's wavelengths, but there's nothing actually happening. There's no particle transfer, right? When you see something from afar, we see things from afar all the time. You can watch things on Zoom. There's no particle transfer, but you see what's happening. So that's why the Gemara distinguishes that there's nothing that's actually taking place in regards to kol and mare. However, v'reach le'achar shetala timraso, after the mitzvah finishes, after the smoke goes up, whatever mitzvah you're doing with smoke, with reach, with smell, then ein bo mishum me'ilah hol v'naseh mitzvaso. So what does that mean? It means that the ktores, when you're making the ktores and smelling it before the mitzvah is done, then there's an isser. Once it's done, you could smell it all day long, no problem. That's not the isser. So the Gemara says l'meimra. This implies it seems to be what you're saying is that reach is no longer a problem once a mitzvah is done. Is that true? But here's a great example. We actually learned this a while back. Where was this Gemara? In Maseches Tmura? Wow, we learned this over a year ago. So it says the Gemara, we have a case of Hare Trumas Hadeshen. Trumas Hadeshen, by definition, Trumas Hadeshen is just ashes from korbanos, right? From other things. So Harei Trumas Hadeshen did not say it's mitzvah. So we have a pasuk there that says that there is a mitzvah that was finished and there's still me'ilah. Trumas Hadeshen. Why? How do we know? The pasuk says 4 lines before the wide lines. The pasuk says you should put it near the mizbeach. Shelo yifazer. You shouldn't spread it out. What does the word visamo mean in particular? Shelo yehaneh. Isser hana. You're not allowed to benefit from the Trumas Hadeshen. You wanted to say that when it comes to reach, that reach is no longer usser. There's no longer me'ilah once the mitzvah is done. Is that to imply that when a mitzvah is done, there's no more isser hana? Not true. Trumas Hadeshen. Says the Gemara, a very important answer, one that will take us to the bottom of the page. And here is how it works. Says the Gemara as follows. Mishum, the reason why you cannot learn from the world of Trumas Hadeshen is because Mishum dehavu Trumas Hadeshen and ubigdei kahuna shnei ksuvan habayin ke'echad. The world of Trumas Hadeshen and the world of bigdei kahuna, the clothes of the Kohen, those two worlds are ksuvan habayin ke'echad. They teach the same din. V'chol shnei ksuvan habayin ke'echad ein melamdin. Whenever you have 2 psukim and each of them teach the same din, you can no longer extrapolate that din to new things. So if we have a din by Trumas Hadeshen that there's a mitzvah, that there's an Isser Hana after the mitzvah, and if we can show by Bigdei Kahuna that there's Isser Hana after the mitzvah, so because the Isser exists in 2 places, therefore you cannot learn it out to anything else. So yes, in fact, it's true that in general, after a mitzvah is done, there's no more Isser Hana. What are the exceptions to the rule? Only Trumas Hadeshen and only Bigdei Kahuna, because it's 2 psukim. Had it only been 1, you're right. We could have asked a good kasha from there. But here, there's a rule. We'll see that it will be argued shortly. But the rule is that when a din applies uniquely to only 2 psukim, by virtue of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only planted those ideas in those 2 psukim, it's indicative that it's specific to those 2 areas. So therefore, even though it's true that there's an Isser Hana after the completion of the mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshen, and after the Kohen uses the Bigdei Kahuna, Afal Pikein, we still cannot take that idea and question other areas of halacha because it is Shnei Ksuvan Habayin Ke'echad, the Chok Shnei Ksuvan Habayin Ke'echad Ein Melamdin, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu teaches us in 2 areas the same idea, it is therefore exclusive to those areas. Trumas Hadeshen Hada'amra, we saw the pasuk that proves our case of Trumas Hadeshen before. That's how we know. The pasuk says, V'samo, Shelo Yehaneh, that there's an Isser Hana after the completion of the mitzvah. Bigdei Kahuna, first of the long lines. What's the pasuk that says that there's an Isser by Bigdei Kahuna? Says the Gemara, Dechsiv Hini Chamsham. The pasuk says you have to place them over there. Milamed, 1 sheet to hold. Shet Unim Geniza. So we see from over there that the Bigdei Kahuna, they need to be buried. You can't use them again. Very good. So this is what the Gemara said. You asked me, what about Reach? Well, Reach's not a problem because there's no Isser Hana for Reach after the mitzvah is done. You're telling me that after a mitzvah is done, that there's no more Isser Hana. What about Trumas Hadeshen? No proof from Trumas Hadeshen because it's 2 things learned from one case, and we brought the psukim to support the case of Trumas Hadeshen and the case of Bigdei Kahuna. Second of the wide lines, honey, I understand your answer, but only the Rabbanan. See, there's a machlokes in regards to what the status is of a hini chamsham. When it comes to Bigdei Kahuna, what actually is the din? That's subject to a machlokes. Because according to the Rabbanan, you're right. It's te'unin geniza. It has to be buried. However, according to Reb Dosa, it's different. Reb Dosa, de Paligalai, who they argue on the Rabbanan, de Amar, they say, what is the status of the Isser of Bigdei Kahuna that cannot be used again? What's the rule? Aval re'uyin hein lekohen hedyot. The only thing that it's limited for is the Kohen Gadol himself again. But a Kohen Hedyot can still use it. What does that show you? That it can still be used. There's no Isser Hana there. It's not an Isser Hana. It's an Isser on the Kohen to wear it again. But it's on the Gavra of that person that he can't wear it again. So good. What then does the pasuk mean? That once a Kohen Gadol wears clothing on Yom Kippur 1, he cannot ever wear it again on Yom Kippur 2. So according to the Shita of Rav Dosi, there is no Isser Hana by the world of Bigdei Kahuna. Well, then your house of cards fell apart. You wanted to say, you can't ask against Reach. I wanted to say that Reach, there's no Isser Hana after a mitzvah is completed. Then we asked for you on Trumas Hadeshen. You said, no. Trumas Hadeshen, Bigdei Kahuna, they're 2 peas in a pod. Not true, because according to Rabbi Dosa, they're not 2 peas in a pod. According to Rabbi Dosa, there's no Isser Hana in general for the Bigdei Kahuna, only for the Kohen himself. Oh, so answers the Gemara. You're right. Very good point. 6 lines from the bottom. Mishum, I have another answer for you. The reason why we can't ask from Trumas Hadeshen on to Reach is because of the following. Mishum dehavu Trumas Hadeshen ve'egla arufa shnei ksuvan habayin ke'echad. Trumas Hadeshin we saw, that we know. And there's another pasuk that has this din as well, and that's the din of an egla arufa. An egla arufa is the din in the Torah in Sefer Dvarim, where if there is a mace that we don't know where the mace came from, so we measure between two cities to see where the mace is closer to, and then that city takes responsibility for the mace. This is referred to as egla arufa. Fine. So then this is a case of shnik ksuvin aban ke'echad. This is where these two psukim, each of them have an Isser Hana after the mitzvah is performed. So says the Gemara, we have another source. It's not going to be the duo of Trumas Hadesh and Big Day Kahuna, because according to Rabbi Dosa, it can't be. Big Day Kahuna don't have an Isser Hana. So therefore, what's the duo? The duo is Trumas Hadesh and Egla Arufa. And now that we have these two areas, and according to Rabbi Dosa, only these two areas where there's an Isser Hana after the mitzvah, it's therefore exclusive, and therefore we cannot ask on our case, where we said, hey, why is Reach problematic? Reach is not problematic after a mitzvah. The mitzvah is over. Good. Says the Gemara, I only can accept this new answer that the two examples of an Isser Hana after a mitzvah is completed is Trumas Hadeshin and Egla Arufa. Says the Gemara, Hanicha, 5 lines from the bottom, Hanicha Lamanda Amar Ein Malamdin. That's only according to the one who says that when a Kadosh Baruch Hu gives us two psukim about one din, that we therefore can't extract to others. However, there are others that don't agree with that. There are those who say that even though it's true that a Kadosh Baruch Hu placed an Isser Hana after a mitzvah only in 2 places, by Trumas Hadesh and Negla Arufa, even so, I can still say that there should be other cases whereby there should be an Isser after the mitzvah is completed. So according to that opinion, what would he say? Forget Reb Dosa. Reb Dosa, that problem was solved by Egla Rufa. But now we have another problem. The problem is that according to some, even though it's only applicable by 2, only applicable by Trumas Hadeshen and Egla Rufa, that there's an Isser Hana after the completion of a mitzvah, but he doesn't care that that's the case. That doesn't make it exclusive. You can still ask the kasha back on our Gemara. Says the Gemara, still, even according to that shita, don't worry, Tremi Utek Sive. In each area of these halachos, in the world of Trumas Hadeshen and in the world of Egla Rufa, there's an exclusionary word, which makes it exclusive specifically to these 2 worlds only. And therefore, we cannot ask on our Gemara. Here's the two drashas. Ksiv v'samo, v'ksiv ha'arufa. Rashi goes to explain. Bahani l'meimer. Rashi goes into this a little bit, not too long of a Rashi, but basically the point of the Gemara here is that in these 2 areas, it's exclusive. And therefore, even according to the opinion who says that when only 2 areas of halacha have an Isser Hana after the mitzvah is completed, we don't have to say that it's exclusive. Even according to him, it doesn't make a difference because these psukim are very exclusive. Good. Going back to our machlokas that we saw on the chart between Rava and Abaye, the Gemara is now going to ask a flurry of questions, primarily on Rava's shita. Rava was of the opinion, if you look back at the chart, Rava in the circle, not in the cloud circle, but Rava in version 2, and he said that in a case of lo efshar v'kol mechavein, in a case where you have no choice but to be in a certain circumstance and you have an intention to do something, so then we said he holds its usher. So let's take a look at this. Fascinating. Says the Gemara on the bottom, Tashma, Yichnisa the Ravaka Vidasha. A Ravaka is where you tie multiple animals together and they walk and they will trample over things on the ground to crush them, wheat, whatever it is. It's things that you need broken down. So the halacha is that this is machlokas here as well. Tosfos here, as you see, it says speaking about a para. There are those who say that we're talking about an egla arufa. So not so clear from the Gemara itself which one it is. But the pasuk, the Mishnah here, the Bryce here says as follows: if you have, let's go with Tosfos for the moment, a para aduma, and the halacha is by a para aduma asher lo ubad ba. You're not allowed to work the animal, right? So he's going in the field, he's working, but he went as part of a ravaka. He's kind of all 4 of them are walking together. So the din is kshera. That's not a psul in the animal. The animal can still be a para aduma. However, bishvil shetinak v'tidosh. What if the animal is doing 2 things? The animal is nursing its young, and it's also trampling things on the ground. So then psula. The Ritva here points out that it's like an interesting svara that in the first case, all he's doing, all the para is doing is walking and crushing things, just walking. But here, because the animal's lo efshar, here's the lo efshar, this is our language, because the mother has to nurse her young, that's lo efshar. So therefore, we also make it, that was bikavana. We also make it that the dasha was also bikavana. So that's how the Ritva explains that this brisa teaches us that it's lo efshar and it's bikavana. What's the din? That it's psula. This is I'm sorry, I said before it's question on Rava. This is a support for Rava. A beautiful support for Rava, because this last case, bishvil shetinok v'tidosh psula, it's a case of lo efshar v'kamechavein, and we see that it's aser. A beautiful support for Rava. Says the Gemara, ve'ahacha de lo efshar v'kamechavein v'katani psula. So Rava wins and Abaye loses. Says the Gemara, not true. Shiny Hasam, there, that world of para has a very unique din, which is d'chsiv asher lo ubad ba mikol makom. Under all circumstances, no matter what, this animal can't do any work. So says the Gemara with a beautiful yet simple question. Hold on one second. What about the Resha? Remember the Resha when he was tied up Biravaka? He was tied up with other animals just loosely, not wearing an ol, because that's usher too. But they were all walking together. You're being so sweeping about Asher lo ubadba mikol makom. This animal can't do any slave labor at all. Well, he's walking in the Resha, says the Gemara, Yachi, afilu Resha nami. Why in the Resha did you say the animal was ksher? He's walking throughout the field. Turn to the top of Daf Chavav Beis. Answers the Gemara, halodam ya'alalaha. The answer that I'm giving you is mirrored after the following principle. Shachan aleha of. Let's say that you have a para. And that's what Rashi says on the top. Let's say you have a bird that lands on top of a para. The halacha is kshera. That doesn't ruin anything. Come on, that's nothing. That doesn't ruin anything. That doesn't remove the status of the para aduma. However, Allah aleha zachar, if the animal were to have been mated by a male, so then psula, that would be considered asher lo ubadba. That's considered some type of avoda. That's unacceptable. My taima. And then the Gemara gets into a little bit of a grammar issue here with the pasuk. We know the pasuk says asher lo ubadba, but there's a kriik sieve. It's not written with an ayin vav beis dalet to spell ubad. It's not that way. It's just vowelized that way. So it says the Gemara as follows. My taima, what's the reason why we would make such a distinction? Amara Papa, Iksiv avad v'karinan avad. Had the pasuk said asher lo avad ba, the verb, the owner is doing something here explicit. He's doing something intentionally, and also v'karinan avad. Had we read it the same way, then ad da'avid be'ihu, until this man does exactly what it is that is forbidden to do, until the animal does the action that's aser, you're fine. Iksiv ubad, that something should happen to it. Iksiv ubad, the karinan ubad. Had it been the case that the pasuk had the letter vav in there, ubad mamish, both of them, then afilu memei lanami. Then even had the bird landed on it. You're right, that would have been problematic also. It would have ruined the para. However, what is the mitzias? Hashta now, 5 lines down. Hashta d'chsiv avad, the karinan ubad. Now that it's written in the verb form, but ubad, the karinan ubad, but that which happened to it. It's read that way. Therefore, ubad dumya de avad. It has to be that which happens to it has to be that which the balabais wants. Ma avad denichale. That which, had he done it intentionally, it would have been his desire. Af ubad denichale. And this explains the distinction why a bird is no big deal. He doesn't care one way or the other. But typically speaking, owners of animals would have a preference that their animals would mate and bear young. That's why I want them to have more. That's how they make more money. That's how they have more milk and food. It's a wonderful thing. So that's a problem. That's a problem. If the animal were to be mated, so then that would be a problem. But just for a bird to land, so that's back to our answer before. What did Rava say? It says psula. So on the bottom line, it says, no. Come on. Just walking in the field is a nothing. But when he's nursing the young and walking in the field, that's too much. That breaks the threshold. So Rava, the question that was in support of Rava is done for. Let's try again. We're 7 lines down, Chavav Amid Beis. Tashma, Aveda, you have a lost item. You have a lost item in your house. For simplicity's sake, we're going to consider this to be a blanket. Lo yishtachena lo al gabe mitza v'lo al gabe magod letzarcho. I'm holding your item. You lost it. I don't know where you are. I'm looking for you. It's a blanket that has simanim. It doesn't have your name on it, but it's unique. So what's halacha? So I'm not allowed to use it for my own benefit. If it's an umbrella, I can't use it. I have to watch it. I have to be a shomer. I cannot use, not a shoel. I have to watch it. Good. Now, yes. What about nizdam? Sorry, hold on one second. Let me start from the beginning. I lost it here. Here you go. If you have a lost item, you cannot spread it out on a bed or on pegs or anything for your own purpose. You are allowed to unroll that blanket. It's getting moldy from the rain. You can do something to protect it. There you're allowed to lay it out. That's not a problem. Now, here's the knech. People come to my house for Shabbos. What a chiddush. People come over for Shabbos, right? So nizdamnu la'orchim. And I have your blanket is sitting on my couch, ready to be used. Lo yishtachena, lo al gabe mita, lo al gabe megod. You cannot spread it out at all when the guests are there. Bein letzorcha, bein letzorcho. Whether or not it's for you or for the blanket, still not allowed. So here we need Rashi, because how do we get from here to supporting Rava? Rashi just to our left. Dibur hamaschel nizdamnu lo orchen. Rashi says, Alma, afal gav delitzorchahu, even though when the guests are there, even though the reason why I'm unrolling your blanket is not for me, even though it's for the blanket, the hainu lo efshar, it should have been a case of lo efshar. I don't have a choice. My job is to do shmira on your aveda, on your lost item. I'm supposed to be taking care of it. That's lo efshar. Because I'm trying to help you with it, I'm getting a hana from your blanket. Wow. So it's lo efshar and mechavein. Look at our chart. That's version 2. That's lo efshar and mechavein. And we see that it's usher support for Rava. Beautiful. That's the question of the Gemara. Says the Gemara, you cannot bring a raya from the world of Hashavas Aveda. Why not? It says the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down, Shani Hasam de Kalile. It has a voice to it. Imishumein Abisha, people will look at you. It looks kind of shady. They know your house. It's not really yours. Imishum Ganve, people are going to think that you're a thief, and therefore the question falls away. Tashma, let's try again. Mochrik Sus, people are selling clothes. We saw this a while back as well in Maseches Shabbos twice. And again, we don't learn Kilayim in Shas, but it's a Mishnah's Kilayim as well. If a person is selling clothes, Mochran Kedarkan, sell them in the regular way. Namely, you can wear them to model them. What is this talking about? Take a look at Rashi, an inch below where we are. Dibur hamaschel Mochran Kedarkan, Me'utafin Biksus Kilayim. We're talking about clothes that are Kilayim. It's shatnez. De'ein miskavin la'nos levisha. Let's say you're in a store. You don't have to do a shatnez test before you try on a suit. You're not wearing the suit. L'shem wearing the suit. You're wearing it to see if it fits, if it's shaykh, if you like the color, you like the cut. You don't have to do a shatnez test then. And later you do. Maybe not even always. It's a good shiloh. How expensive does it do? Where does rove fall in? Good shilohs. By and large, we should get our suits checked for shatnez. And by and large, it's rare that for suits under a few $100s that they are going to have shatnez, but the more expensive suits often do. Toshma, mochrik sus, mochran kedarkan, you can wear it regularly, but provided that if it's hot out and you're wearing an airy shirt, your Hawaiian shirt as it were, that you're not intending to get hana from, and you're wearing a raincoat in the rainy season, you should not have kavanah. But there's a higher level. That's snuin, says the Brisa. Those who are more modest, those who are a little more stark, they're going to hold the stick out, and that's how they're going to hold the coat up. Our version, the old version of the mannequin, right? Instead of you wearing it, something else will wear it. Let's look back at our chart. It's efshar. This is version 1. We're going back a little bit here. It's efshar lemevad kitsnuin. You had an option. That's the shita of Abaye, right? Because Abaye says that in the case where it's efshar, where I could have chosen, I could have done like the tznuin. I could have put the shatnez on the pole. It's still mutter for me to do it. That's efshar. I can choose. And as long as I'm lo mechavein, it's mutter. I'm a furish brisa that supports Abaye, and therefore says the Gemara, tiyuvta leman demasne lishna kama de Rava. This is a rejection of Rava in version number 1. Lishna kama tiyuvta. Done. He's done for. Anyways, version number 1 we wouldn't accept it because we had too many other Marim Makomos. But this brisa in particular rejects that idea. And of sugya, you can use this chart as a brief chazara. It does hopefully paint a semi-clean picture of how to look at the various approaches and the various shitas they're in. Of course, there's way more detail in the Gemara and in the Rishonim, but that should hopefully just help as a chazar. Halfway down Chavav Amud Beis, starting a new sugya. If you will recall, I think it was on Daf Chaf Aleph, we had a new Mishnah. Yes, it was the beginning of the Perek, the beginning of Perek Kol Shah. And there we spoke about something. It said, V'lo yasig bo tanor v'kirayim. So what's going on with that case of V'lo yasig bo tanor v'kirayim? You cannot. What does that mean? You can't heat up an oven with things that are fuel effectively. So let's see what's going on here. Below Yasikbo, halfway down, a little bit more Chavav Amud Beis. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught us. Tanu Shehi Siko Biklipo or Biklipe Orla or Bikashin Shel Kilaya Kerem. If you use as fuel in a tanur, you're using that which really has an Isser Hana status to it. You're using Orla, you're using Kilaya Kerem. These things have a status of Isser Hana. You're using it as the logs inside your new oven. So it says the Gemara, Chadash Yutatz, if it's a brand new oven. So basically the way that it worked then is that the first time that you heated up your oven in full, like the full temperature, it was kind of like the sealant of sorts that made the oven like perfect. Now it's like kind of like the makeh b'patish. Now it's ready to be used. So it says the Gemara, Chadash, if your oven was new, yutatz, the only thing you could do is break it to make it kosher, because the way that it became kosher was be'isr hana. It became kosher with kilayim, or with orla. However, yashan yutzan, if it was an old oven, then you just have to wait till it cools down in order to use it again, no problem. Now, all of that was without bread in the oven. What if you were making bread and using these pieces of wood that had an Isser Hana status? Afabo esapas. What if you were baking bread? So then Rabbi Omer, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, Hapas asura, v'chachamim omer mapas piteres. Machlokes, Rabbi and the Chachamim, as to whether or not the bread would be problematic. According to Rabbi, it's problematic. It's absorbing into it the steam from the wood that is an Isser Hana, not allowed. Bishla gabe gechalim. In contrast, if it's not things like kash and like kilaya kerem, and you're using coals, divrei kol mutter, that's fine. That will not cause any problems. The chilukim made in the Rishonim here in Rashi, take a look. We just don't have a lot of time. Says the Gemara, but wait a minute. You said that when it comes to a new oven, that with a chadash, it's yutatz, which with a new oven. If the heating that you use was aser behana, then you need to destroy the oven. And you said that if it's yashan, then you can keep it alive. But hold on one second. Vatanya, ben chadash uvein yashan yutzan. We see a shita that's much more lenient, that even if it's the first burn, even if you're using these things which have an Isser Hana, the first burn, afal pikain, it's still, you don't have to destroy it. Yutzan, just wait till it cools down. All good. Answers the Gemara, lo kasha. And now the Gemara is kind of going out on a limb. Ha Rebbe v'ha Rabbana. Maybe this is like Rebbe. Now, the case that we're talking about that has a conflict is before Rebbe in the Brisa. Looking at the 2 dots above us, 5 lines above us, we're talking about before Rebbe, before the case of the bread. We're just talking about what the status is of the oven. But the Gemara says, hey, maybe it's the same as Rebbe. Maybe Rebbe thinks that just like the bread would absorb the steam from the Isser Hana and it's Usher, so to the walls, and therefore, okay, so that could be the Malchum Rashita. Maybe the Rabbanan will hold differently. Says the Gemara, that can't be. Aim or the Shamas le the Rebbe. When does Rebbe say his opinion that the bread would become Usher? That's because Mishum di Shevach Eitzim Bepas. No, that's because the wood gives a positive flavor, gives a positive something to the bread. But zev is zeh gorem mishamasle. You think that he would say that all of the wood that's in there, some of which is kilayim, some of which is orla, some of which is neither. You think that that's zev is zeh gorem. He's going to say that that's going to be totally usher. That you have some zev is zeh means some mutter and some usher behana. Would he say that? That can't be. He would not say that. Elalo kasha, you're right. It cannot be that it's Rebbe who holds of the strict opinion. It must be somebody else in our Mishnah, not Rebbe. Ella lo kasha, the beginning of our Mishnah that says that by a chadash it has to be yutatz, by a new oven. If the first time you bring it to full temperature is with an Isser Hana, so then that has to be HaRebbe Eliezer, HaRabbanan. That's the machlokas. So then ask the Gemara, hi Rebbe Eliezer. Which Rabbi Eliezer are you talking about? We're going to see 2 different ones here. Hi, Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer, or if you want to say that maybe we can learn this out from a case of Rabbi Eliezer, the Tana, who's talking about yeast for making bread. It's not 6 lines from the bottom. Chavav Medbeis. Seor shel chulin v'shel truma shenaflu l'toch isa. You have yeast from chulin and yeast from truma that falls into bread. Ve'ein bazeh kedei lahachmitz, ve'ein bazeh kedei lahachmitz. Neither of them are a sufficient amount to leaven the bread. But together they have enough to leaven the bread. Together, the 2 of them, it was enough yeast to raise the dough. So then machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, achar acharon aniba. I just follow whatever's last. Right, whatever falls in last, that's the one that Rabbi Eliezer. The lumdus is not relevant for now. I don't care which one falls last. I disagree with Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer would say it's only mutter if the chulin falls last. But if the truma falls in last, you're right. Then it's all going to be truma and problematic. Good. However, say the Chachamim, I don't agree. It doesn't make a difference if the Isser fell first or last. La'olam, last line, and turning to the top of Chav Zayin and Aleph, La'olam, Eino Oser Ad Sheyehebo K'dei Lahachmitz. Until the truma has enough to cause for the chametz to be made on its own, enough yeast on its own of the truma, and nothing is going to be Aser. Omer Abaye. How does Abaye understand the shita of Rabbi Eliezer? He says as follows: Lo shanu ela shekadam v'silek es ha'isser. When Rabbi Eliezer says, Rashi explains this at the top, that we're talking about Rabbi Eliezer. When Rabbi Eliezer says his opinion that we always follow when the Isser is last, that's only true shekadam v'silek es ha'isser. When you scooped out the yeast that fell in that shouldn't be there. Aval lo kidim v'sila gesa iser aser. So, but if you don't take out the iser, so then it would be aser. What do we see from here? Alma zev v'zeh gorim aser. When you have some mutter yeast and some aser yeast, what do we see? Doesn't work. You have to remove it, says Abaye, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. So says the Gemara, I understand Abaye, I understand Rabbi Eliezer the way that Abaye says it, but ask the Gemara, who says Abaye is right? Maybe that's not what Rabbi Eliezer meant. Fourth line, Umimai the time of Rabbi Eliezer, ki Abaye. Who says that Rabbi Eliezer agrees to this new introduction of material that you have to remove the Isser? Rabbi Eliezer didn't say that. All he said was whatever fell in last is what we follow. So says the Gemara, fifth line, Dilma, time of Rabbi Eliezer, mishum da'achar. I'm just following the last one. Loshna kadam v'silik esa Isser. It doesn't make a difference if you remove the Isser. Loshna lo kidem v'silik esa Isser. Abal b'vasa achas ha'achanam midashari. Maybe we can assume that both of them together are fine, and zev would be mutter. That when you have a mixture of that which is mutter, yeast that's mutter and yeast that's not, still fine, no problem. We just follow whatever goes last. For whatever reason, Rabbi Eliezer holds that. In other words, maybe Abaye's Havamina is wrong, and Rabbi Eliezer cannot be the Tan of our Tosefta. He cannot be, because this brisa, when we take away Abaye's explanation, which is mechudash, it's not even implied in Rabbi Eliezer. We added that in on his own. Remove the Isser. Rabbi Eliezer didn't say that. So maybe the pashtus of Rabbi Eliezer is that you're allowed to have yeast that's allowed to be there and yeast that's not. Gorim mutter. And therefore he cannot be the machmer shit on our brisa. So says the Gemara, you're right. Let's try another option of Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer da'atzei Asherah. What we're talking about here is that Rabbi Eliezer was speaking about wood from an Asherah, from an Avodah Zarah tree. Ditznan, the Mishnah writes, not al himena eitzim. You've taken wood from an avodah zarah tree, asurim behano. He seek bahenes a tanur. Our case, what if you use this to heat up a tanur? Chadash yutatz yashan yutzan. If it's a new oven, then you have to break it down. Done. If it's an old oven, yutzan, you can just wait until it's done. Afa boes hapas. If you baked bread, asura behana. Nisarva be'acheros ve'acheros be'acheros. If it gets all mixed up, kulan asurim behana. All of that is the Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yolichana liyama melach. Very unique shita. We've seen this line elsewhere, but I don't believe it was in the context of here. Rashi says, Dibra Maschal Yolichana liyama melach. You can throw the hana, you can throw the Isser hana into the sea. Well, how does that work? So it says Rashi, Dmei eitzim. If you throw the financial value, let's say the wood is worth $5, and you give away that money, you throw it into the sea. So then says the Gemara, then you're good to go. What's implied? If you leave it and you don't pay the Dmei Eitzim, then it's not allowed. So first of all, Amru lo ein pidyon avodah zarah. First of all, the Chachamim pushed back and said you're not allowed to be pod avodah zarah. But what's implied from the line of Yolich Hana liyama melach is that Rabbi Eliezer believes that you can remove the Yisr Hana by a pediyah of sorts, by taking the financial equivalent and throwing it into the Yama melach. But what if you don't do that? So then you have zev gorim aser. Perfect. That's our marimah. That's what we wanted. We were trying to find a machmir shita to fit the nameless Tana in our Mishnah, in our Tosefta in the middle of Chavav Mabez, and we found one right here. Says Gemara, maybe not. Maybe the reason why Rabbi Eliezer was more machmir here to say that when you have yet to do the pidyon, it's aser because it's avodah zara. The avodah zara the chamir isura. That's mamish. We just saw it yesterday. It's one of the gimel mitzvos yaharag vel yavor. So maybe you can't bring a raya from a chiddush case. Maybe he would not say that. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer would hold B'shari Surim Shabbatorah that really zev gorim mutter, that when you have a mixture of that which is allowed and that which is not allowed, it's totally fine. Again, not a raya for a Mishnah. Says Gemara, can't be. 1/3 of the way down Chav Zayin and Aleph. Elaim Kain Aman Tarmiye. Who else is going to be the author of that Mishnah? Not only that, Be'od Hatanya Behedra, we have an explicit line in the Tanoim. V'chein Haya Rabbi Eliezer Oser B'chol Yisurim Shabbatorah. We have a brisa that adds on to the one that we just saw, that he agrees that it applies across the boards, period. We accept the machlokas between the brisa, the beginning of our brisa that says Tanu Rabbanan, halfway down in Chavav Mebez, and the brisa that's brought a few lines later, the machlokas is between Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan. The Rabbi Eliezer that we're talking about is from Atzei Asherah. Very good. Halfway down, one more sugya until Ma'ariv. Amar Abaye. And this is theoretical because some of this has been rejected already. Amar Abaye, Im Tim Salomar Zev is a Gorem Aser. If you are of the opinion that Zev is a Gorem is Aser, then Rabbi Hainu Rabbi Eliezer. Then Rabbi would be the same as the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. That's not so simple because the Gemara on the Amud Beis, on Chav Vav Amud Beis, rejected Rabbi as being the possibility of being the Machmer Shita. Let's put that aside for now. This is all theoretical anyways. This is kind of like, if you want to say this, he's kind of bantering. Im Tim Salomar Zev is a Gorem Mutter. And if you want to say that really when there's a mixture of that which is allowed and that which is not allowed, we would allow for the result to stay mutter. The hacha here by the bread, mishum diyesh shevach eitzim bepasu. That's only because of the bread that it gets benefit from the wood. Then hani karos v'kosos v'tzluchios asire. Then those other things should be potentially problematic, just like the bread. They're being used in the oven in that way. Ki pligi, where would the machlokas then be? B'tano u'ktera, only with the oven itself, in our case, where it's a new oven, or b'ktera, a pot that's going to be boiled for the first time on top of a fire. Says the Gemara, according to the one who says that you're not allowed to have mutter things and usher things together, he'd hold that this is usher too. And Lamanda Amar Zev is a gorim mutter shari. And according to the one who holds Zev is a gorim is permissible, the Rabbanon, they would hold that there is no problem with the tanur and with the ktera. Says the Gemara, Ikada Amri, a slightly different version of this. Ikada Amri, afilu Lamanda Amar Zev is a gorim mutter kedera asura. Even according to the one who would say that when you have a mix of things going on in the oven, even if you want to say Zev is a mutter, like the Brisa says on the bottom, like the Rabbanon, we would still say that a pot on top of the oven would be aser. Because you use the pot already just for putting stuff in there. The fact that the pot is usable, that you can put stuff in there, done. That already makes it a use, and therefore we would not say that it would be mutter to be exposed because it's not really Zev anymore. Let's just stop right here at Amar of Yosef, and we will pick up on Shabbos. We'll have a little bit more time on Shabbos. So we're stopping at the bottom of Chav Zayin Amud Beis, about 12 lines from the bottom at Amar of Yosef, Amar of Yehuda. Have a beautiful night. Thank you so much for joining. I don't